Okay, hi everyone. Good evening. Thank you for being here, first of all. So I'm Elvis. I'm one of the trainers also for for Elastic the company, and I'm here with some of my colleagues delivering a training here in Zurich, and I'm really enjoying it. Not so much the heat, but that's just another topic for another day. So I'm really excited to really introduce this Elastic SIEM. So I'm not a security specialist, not a security analyst or any of that. And that is what makes it exciting actually, because I could actually use this product and it's pretty intuitive and easy to use. So I'm going to show you some like demonstration. I'm going to give you also some ideas on what this product is all about. So I would just give you like a walkthrough of this Elastic SIEM application. Also, just a quick note here, if you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hand and ask your question, okay? So we have some specialists here as well. My friend here, Torben, he's a security specialist. If you have any things related to security and you want to go in depth in that, you have some question, please ask, and he will be able to address those questions. Now, if you have any questions on the application side, you can address those to me, and anyone in our team also will be able to help you out with that, okay? So the first question here, the very important one is, what's Elastic, right? If you don't know Elastic, it's really important to give an introduction of the company. So Elastic can be summarized as this. So it's just like a search company, okay? So we have many different solutions. We do things like, okay, security analytics is one of them. This is a recent solution that we have introduced, right? So we have other solutions as well, things like machine learning. You can do things like monitoring, and just a broad range of solutions that are part of the stack. Okay, so but mostly the center point is that we are a search company. So we really like this nice. We like to always show this when we give our presentations. This really clearly define one of the main products of Elastic, which is Elasticsearch, which is kind of like the heart of all the Elastic stack. So Elasticsearch is basically a distributed, scalable, almost real-time search engine. Okay, it gives you analytics. If you haven't worked in this with this application, gives you analytics, gives you a really nice way on how to store your data and be able to search it and basically create charts of it. You can do many things with the data once it's stored in Elasticsearch. Okay, so that's the idea of Elasticsearch. So more on this one, why I'm introducing Elasticsearch here when this is an Elastic SIEM meetup. Well, it's really nice to use it because obviously all the data that's stored in the Elastic Stack is stored in Elasticsearch. So it's very important to talk about it. So we have some really nice use cases and where Elasticsearch is being used. So we have companies like Uber. They're doing their geopoints, you know, like something like a query. Maybe you want to search for a vehicle or something like that near you. All of that stuff is being done with the search, which is provided by Elasticsearch. Okay, so we have Yelp, which is another great example. So this is more like, okay, we have reviews, and maybe we have reviews by locations and things like this. So also it's related to like geopoints, but all kinds of data as well. As you can see in here, we have things like text, right? So text analytics is something that's very important as well, and that is fully supported by Elasticsearch as well. So I'm not going to go into details with all these different use cases, but it's just nice to know where Elasticsearch is being used. So another one is Tinder. This is kind of funny one, but yeah, so Tinder, when you swipe right, swipe left, all these different actions that you're taking with the application and whoever you are interacting with the app, most of that stuff is being done basically behind the scenes by maybe an Elasticsearch query or maybe an Elasticsearch search request, okay? So many different use cases. If you are interested in scaling, Elasticsearch is a great solution for you. So a brief overview of the stack. I mentioned the stack earlier. This is what the stack looks like. We have different solutions. So these are our core solutions. So we can see here that we have down here we have Beats and we have Logstash. Then we have Elasticsearch, which is what I just discussed. And then we have Kibana on top. So Kibana is considered like the window to the Elastic Stack, right? This is where you go, interact with your data, search your data, and whatever you want to do with your data. So when I introduce Elastic SIEM, you will see where exactly it appears and why it's pretty useful to have such a great tool for visualization. Another one, important one, is where does the data come from, right? What do we use to ingest data, right? To like basically process our data. So we have an ETL tool which is called Logstash, and this is one of the solutions that we have to ingest data properly into Elasticsearch. Beats is another one which I'll discuss in a bit as well. So Beats is more like a lightweight agent that's installed maybe on a server or a computer, and you're basically extracting information from that, ingesting that data, and then processing it right and putting it into Elasticsearch, right? So brief overview of the Elastic Stack, and you see all the different components of the stack there, the important ones. So search is great. I gave you a brief overview of the Elastic Stack. What about security analytics? How does this fit in all of this Elastic Stack, right? In all our solutions, and how do these like security analytics? How is it possible to do this? How does this application, such as a SIEM, how does it interact with other applications in the stack? So these are questions we are constantly asking ourselves, and this is what we're using to basically improve this product. So this product, by the way, is in it's basic license, by the way, so it's for free, but it's a recent release, right? So you will see things. It's a very intuitive way on how to use the SIEM application. So what's the motivation, right? What's the motivation behind having something like Elastic SIEM, just a security analytics application inside the stack? So we keep thinking about all the partners, vendors, and everyone we work with, and we want to provide a solution for our users that can achieve security analytics. It's a very important use case for our partners and customers and our users in the community. So you can see here we have a nice picture here showing basically all the different like an ecosystem here, showing things like the cloud, examples like Docker containers. So how can you basically integrate all these different solutions in one place, and having the capacity to be able to basically analyze, keep monitoring your network data, your events data? How do you do that? Okay, and our answer to that is basically the Elastic SIEM, right? That's how we introduce this, and that's basically how we basically say this is the product we want to introduce, and Elastic SIEM is the answer to all those integrations in that ecosystem I showed. So what is Elastic SIEM, right? I've been talking a bit about it. Elastic SIEM enables analysis of two important types of data, which is host-related and network-related data. Okay? So the idea of this is having a nice way to interact with this data. So having an application and being able to do things like alert investigations, triaging of events if you're working in a collaboration group, or conduct some initial investigation, do some search on your data, whatever you're interested in. And also a really good use case is the part with threat hunting. Okay? I think the most impressive thing about Elastic SIEM so far that I've used it like I have to be honest, like a couple months now from when it was released. The thing I really like about it is it's built to be collaborative, which is very important. And also it's highly interactive, and you can just move things around and play with your data really nicely, as I will show you in the demo. So these are, I think, the two main benefits of the Elastic SIEM solution. So I spoke about the data. So there are two types of data. So we have network data, and to get this data into Elasticsearch, you would use some things like PacketBeat or FileBeat. And we have some examples here of the kind of sources that you want to put in into Elasticsearch, right? So these are some of the sources. I'm not going to go into details into each one of them, but you have an idea of exactly what you need to use if you fall under any one of those categories. Okay, so this is just like you saw the Elastic Stack figure. It's basically the same thing. We have the beats and Logstash, but now this is in the context of SIEM. So you can see that we have Elasticsearch in the middle, and then we have something called the ECS, which I'll discuss in a bit as well, a very important part of the solution itself. And then we have Kibana on top of it, of course. And then interaction with the Elastic community is kind of a really huge priority for making sure this product is heading in the right direction. So there are many types of data shippers. I discussed slightly what the PacketBeat is to import that network data. There are many different kinds of beats. You can see here heartbeat, metric beat, PacketBeat, and each one is really useful for a specific type of data that you're working with. If you're working the log files, network data, metrics data, So we have different beats for different types of data, okay? So I mentioned slightly the ECS. So when we're talking about ingesting data, and what we want to ensure is that since we're working with a lot of types of data sources, we want to ensure that we have some correlation among those data sources. We want to ensure that we standardize and normalize our data. And our answer to this is basically introducing the Elastic Common Schema. So with this, you can be able to basically normalize your data if you have a common set of fields that are in the different sources that you're interacting with. ECS is a great way. It offers you some best practices on how to define your fields, how to define your mappings, and the kind of fields you want to make sure you enforce when you are indexing data into Elasticsearch. So there's some links here. I'm going to share this set of slides, and you can see some of the links for yourself and get more a feel for what these different things that I'm talking about here, for example, the ECS, and you can learn more about that in those links. I will share with that later with you later, okay? So SIEM, let's talk about SIEM. That's what we're here for. SIEM has different components, but as I said earlier, it's a pretty simple application, right? You will see in the demo how easy it is to use. Basically, it's very intuitive. It offers you 4 different options. So we have an overview, which is basically gives you like an overview of exactly what type of data you have, and the different sources of data and where they're coming from, and it basically gives you a summary. Host basically says, okay, we have data coming from specific hosts, multiple hosts, so it gives you an overview of the data coming from hosts. Network is the same, it's just a different type of data. Anything network activities and these kind of logs, you can find them here. And timelines is a really interesting feature, I believe. This is what makes a difference with, maybe other SIEM solutions out there. You can interact with your data, use the timeline to generate, basically provide like data providers there, create queries, and just query your data in a very nice and intuitive way. So that's really helpful as well, I believe. And then, of course, you can add data from here, but there are other ways you can import data as well. And then we have the anomaly detection. This is basically what consists the SIEM application, right? So these are the 5 main components of the SIEM app. And I'll discuss each one of them as I go through the demo. So I really like this. I borrowed this from one of my colleagues. He presented this SIEM application as well a few weeks back. And I really like this. It's not meant to be funny, but the idea is that security is a mission, not really an intermission. And this is, for the long haul. This is not something you can, security is not something you can solve overnight, right? We all know that. And it takes great effort from communities, partnerships, and whatever, even these meetups, of course. And so I believe it's more like, the long haul thing, not something that we can solve overnight. So this is what the community ecosystem looks like right now. You see some famous companies here already. You can see that we're trying our best to partner up with vendors that work in this space as well. And, we're finding ways on how to integrate all these different use cases, security analytics use cases, into the stack itself. And we even have, we're working really hard on providing the best consulting and education and training also for related to security analytics. So we're making great efforts in those parts as well. And we're really very, very serious about security analytics. And you will see for yourself that when I show you that demo, how really cool that application is. So more on the training part. So if you're really interested in getting started with security analytics, maybe you're an enthusiast, maybe you have been working in the space, but you may want some idea on how you can use the stack, maybe leverage the stack that you already have. I think this will be the best place to go. We have a thread hunting with Kibana course, so it's really easy course because it uses Kibana, of course, and it shows you basically how to import that data and how to play with the data and how to do things like thread hunting, and it's really nice course, right? So we have it in 2 versions here. So we have a 4 hours for 4 days, which is a virtual class, right? You can access it from anywhere. And then we have 8 hours for 2 days. Again, this is just a training in person. So, we do the full 8 hours in a day, and we cover this for 2 days. So, yeah, it's time for the demo. Let's see here. So, Any questions so far before I start the demo? Okay. Okay, so whenever I give like a Kibana demo, I always start with the Discover panel. I really like the Discover panel. That's where, as a data analyst, I want to know what my data looks like first before I even start to interact with it. So this is just a best practice here. So I start with the Discover application right here on the left-hand side, right? And you can see basically right here how your data looks like. So you can see that these are events, of course, and it has some timestamp associated with it. And you see the different pieces of information. So this data is actually being imported, ingested using AuditBeat, right? So it keeps track of things like where the agent is, the host name of the agent, what event that is, information about the event, information about the host itself, what the architecture is, different IPs related to that, if it's a Mac, and many different pieces of information, process as well, what the process is for a specific event. So it's really granular, right? It's a lot of information here. So that's just what it looks like in the Discover phase. So you get a feel for what your data looks like. So now I'm going to jump straight into the SIEM application. So if you have downloaded Elasticsearch in Kibana and you have downloaded SIEM, which is offered as part of the basic license, you can directly go here. You have access to the SIEM right here. Oh, that's bad. Last one? This one. Okay. Okay, so this is a SIEM solution, right? As promised, it's very intuitive, very easy to understand actually. You see, we have an overview. So we know SIEM is in beta, of course, as I mentioned. And we get some basic information about it. You have some documentation. You have the SIEM solution page, which you can go directly. And you have like a feedback. Of course, this thing is in beta. So whatever feedback you give us will help build this solution to much better and useful product for the community. So we have host events and we have network events. So we distinguish between these two events. And you can see, obviously, some metrics here about the types of events that we have stored already in Elasticsearch, right? So you can imagine SIEM is this layer on top of the data already, giving you a nice user interface, a nice summary of your data, and then you can start to play around with it. So host includes, obviously, more drill down information about what the host information is about. So we have things like authentication, so where those authentications are from, what kind of users, when was the last successful login, and where there was failures in those logins, what user is associated with that. So all the information you need about authentications in your whatever you are ingesting this data from, okay? Whatever host. So uncommon processes, which is really nice as well, gives you information about those uncommon processes. As you can see here, there's some examples here about, I'm not even familiar with this kind of data here, by the way. So you can see just different kinds of processes there. So anomalies is really interesting because, as I said, one of the efforts we're trying here is to not just offer you a SIEM solution within Kibana, but the idea is to have for you some integration as well with the other solutions that we have inside Kibana. So how do we use it with something like machine learning, for example? So anomalies, you can see here, are part of that already. It's a good example because when you do anomalies, basically you go into the machine learning application, you set a job, and that becomes part of the SIEM application as well. So you define that you want to do this on the audit data, on the AuditBeat data, and then it gives you information about that here. More information about events here, some timestamp associated with it. You have really nice data here about all the different events. Sorry about the hosts, right? And events happening in those hosts. Okay? So the other one is network. Again, these are two types of data. So everything that's happening in the network, whatever websites you're accessing as well. If you're familiar with network events data, you will see some of these things appearing here. Okay? So by the way, this is already automatically being done for you, so it's automatically being segregated for you, right? You can do that already. So you can see here who are the top attackers, whichever IPs are associated with that, how much packets are being distributed there in those networks using those IPs, and then DNS domains as well, whichever domains you're accessing via those machines, and also the anomalies part. So I'm not going to go into details into each one of these, but I really want to introduce to you like the timelines. I think timelines is a really great way. It really makes a difference in the SIEM application, because if it was just stable information, it's not. You can imagine it's not really useful. But this is where I think our SIEM solution makes a huge difference. So with timeline, you get this kind of interface. So now here you can define a timeline. You give it a name, you give it a description or whatever you're defining here, and you tell it, okay, I want to search my data. So I'm going to make this a little smaller here because it's going to take up my whole screen. Okay, so the cool thing about this is, unlike other applications inside Kibana, you can do something like this. So you can drag and you can say, okay, I want to do a search on the username field, and I want it to have the value of root. So you can see here that all the associated information with that, whenever we do this search, you see all the information here appearing on the bottom. So now you could start to investigate your data in this way. So you search for something, then you go drill down into that data and find out exactly what it is. So outside you saw some summaries, maybe some interesting summaries. Again, it's not usual to have so many failures in this example, so we want to explore more about that. And I have an example here of a timetable that was already done. And let's just open that. So if you just go to the same application here and you go to timelines, you basically see all the different timelines we have created. So I go to one that has been created already here. I just open it. Maybe I saved it before, so I now just open it. And you can see here that someone already did some investigation into this. What happened to that root access and so many failures. So someone did investigation here, and I could actually access that, maybe a collaborator somewhere, and he made a note, okay, there was some like failed login attempt, and it was found that this is not malicious, so maybe no further actions need to be required here. So I'm okay with this. If I'm on the other side, I'm an analyst and I'm looking at this, maybe I could just ignore this and move on with the other analysis that I have in mind. Okay, so really great. So now you can see that you can access nodes at the top here. So whatever nodes you can just go to, if you're familiar with Markdown, you go to that and basically put your notes there as you're doing your investigation. One very important feature in all Kibana applications is the filter. You have to provide a time filter, of course. You can see here that I have a day, right? There was a specific day in which I was going doing this investigation. Well, my colleague was doing this investigation, and I knew exactly when that occurred. Okay? So when you're working with timelines and every other application in Kibana, very important to note this part of the application. Okay? So as you can see here, he actually did some investigation using two fields. So he put like a query here which has an AND logic. So he said, I want to combine different data providers. So I want to know what's exactly the information contained in username, and I want to know what's contained in file.pad as well. And I specify a specific query here, and we have a value inside of that, and you can see the results there. Okay, it's pretty similar to how you would do like an Elasticsearch request, like a query, and you get that information that you need here, and you can perform the investigation. So I don't really have a good example here to show you exactly where it could be, done for something like threat hunting or something like that. I think the idea that I want to put across to you is that you can see how it's really intuitive to use. It has that collaborative nature, and it works really similar to how Elasticsearch works. Okay, so you can do similar things like querying, and do some investigation about it. Okay. So yeah, that's it for me. This is a very, very, very light introduction into SIEM applications.